Welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to episode number 85 of the EntrePastors podcast. My name is John Sanders. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show. And in this episode, you're going to hear us talking with a guest by the name of Dan LaRock. He's a good friend of ours, and we're titling this From Corporate Ministry to Nonprofit Ministry with Dan LaRock. You're going to hear his story of how he has worked in the corporate setting for many years, but also he and his wife have founded a nonprofit ministry, and he's using much of his business acumen and business skills inside of that ministry setting, and as a result, definitely fits in this world of our EntrePastors community and EntrePastors tribe. So there's some really good stuff coming up in this episode. One of the things that myself and my co-host Les Hughes talk with Dan about is how do you know when is the right time to set up a nonprofit versus a for-profit business? So that, among many other things that we're going to cover in this episode, is coming your way. So let's get into it. Here we go. Well, Dan LaRock, you have made it to the big stage, my man. You are on officially the EntrePastors podcast, and we're delighted to have you as a guest on the show. Welcome.
Les and John, honored to be with you today. I've been able to catch a number of episodes in recent months, and just think what you two are doing to help lift the profession into a different scope and a different thought about itself in terms of being able to both avoid that scarcity while also delivering the word. I mean, that's awesome, and I think it's a great show. So thank you for having me. Yep.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate
that means a lot. That means a lot. You were recommended to us, referred to us by someone who also means a lot to Les and I, Austin Brooks, who has been a guest on our podcast, and he spoke very highly of you. And as I've told you a couple times now, and so far, Austin has not let us down on the people he's introduced us to. He knows some fine quality human beings, and we're hoping that this trend continues with you, Dan.
So no pressure
here.
Yeah. I don't feel any pressure at all. Though the weight of that recommendation. I mean, let's hopefully we can keep this interview past 3 minutes. So that would be ideal, right? Right.
So doing great.
Austin's got a super heart for our Lord, and he's got a great mind for helping instruct young people into I think the art of entrepreneurship, and he's got a heart for both of those things, and it's been a pleasure to get to know him and work with him in that endeavor.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, why don't we start with just a little introduction of yourself to our community? You're not a pastor per se. You do ministry through a nonprofit ranch that you run, and we'll get into that a little bit. But why don't you just back up and kind of give us the highlights of your career and the work that you do, and then we'll start digging into some of that.
Absolutely. Well, the most important people in my life live with me between Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Southwest Minnesota. So my wife, Marie, who is the CEO of Rock Ranch, and our 3 kids. We've got a son, Zach, a son, Luke, and a daughter, Allie. We are tucked right in here between South Dakota and Minnesota most of the time. I have a partner in a firm called Hub International. We are the Hub Great Plains region. So we work with large employers all around the super regions and across the country, helping them with their benefit management and risk management, retirement, things of that nature. And we're fortunate to work with a large number of folks that have some familiarity across the country in terms of name brand groups. Secondly, Rock Ranch is an area that my wife and I have spent some time in the last several years, and it's been a growing mission-based ministry. And we feel wonderful about being able to introduce people to I think the beauty of horsemanship in a number of different ways. I'm a new author as well, and I frequently speak on employee benefits, other topics, to groups of diverse folks all around the upper Midwest. And when I get a chance to get down into the southern regions, like where Mr. Hughes occupies, I will take those opportunities any chance I can get, particularly in the months of December, January, February.
Amen.
I get an amen?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple. So, when Austin introduced us, I realized like you and I are not that we're practically neighbors, so
Yeah.
we're right here in the same region. And yet our stories are a little different. A lot of the people that we interview on our show go in the opposite order. They spend some time in ministry work, nonprofit work, we call it pastoring. But then, we encourage them at some point, or they've done it on their own and we've found them. And, but they, at some point they've transitioned into some kind of marketplace venture of their own, some kind of business. And again, we think that's a good thing here at EntrePastors. We encourage that. We're fans of that. You're kind of a little different model. You're in the marketplace, in the insurance space, and then you get into ministry. Again, I don't know that you call yourself a pastor, but you're still ministering to people. And I'd love to hear the story. Like, how did you start this Rock Ranch, and what is the vision for that? How are you serving people? And then I'm going to also ask you, like, how does that business acumen, play over into the Rock Ranch, the stuff that you're doing on the ministry side of things?
Right. Yeah, and my career started off in mission-based not-for-profits. I
Okay.
worked in public relations for higher ed, and also in foundational advancement work, development work for higher ed, and in healthcare for the first 8 years of my career. So I spent some time in mission-based not-for-profit work. It was a mental health center that I worked for in the healthcare space before I moved over to Hub. And so Rock Ranch came about as a 501c3 entity. In my wife's giftedness is in speech language pathology, psychology. She knows how to interact with children on a developmental scale as they're developing into young adults, and works with kids. It has worked with kids for the bulk of her career in education systems and in clinic settings. So when Rock Ranch came to be, John, I can remember walking across our pasture area where our horses are, and Marie said, Dan, this was probably in 2015, and she said, Dan, I have been wrestling, with I think the Holy Spirit, and he's up in my grill, and I can't shake this. I know that the land we have and the horses that occupy it and live on it are something that I think I need to share more with people, with more people, with kids in particular. And I think we need to open up who we are and who we could be, and how this ranch could operate for his goodness, his glory, and be able to share kind of a horsemanship with people. So it's kind of where it started. And she looked at me like, what do you think? And then what she describes is the critical moment, me going, well, honey, if the Holy Spirit's up in your grill like that, you got to respond. And she's like, oh no, you agree. And that became the genesis, that first conversation that launched us into what is today now Rock Ranch. Marie has what I describe as the giftedness of creating all the kinds of experiences and opportunities that children, adults, and families are seeking when it comes to horses and time with them. And I have the ability to think through, what type of corporate setting do we need to decide upon? Are we going to be for-profit, nonprofit? If we're going to be nonprofit, what status of the 501 code? Are we going to be 501c3, 4, 509A? I mean, how are we going to do this? And so I take that business side with the marketing and the finance and the management and the fundraising, and she does everything people want to come for. And we smash those things together, right? Like a smash burger. And out of it comes something that 3,000 people came to see in a town of 500 people last year. Awesome. And are having experiences that they continue to re-enroll for, and experiences that they tell their friends about, and experiences that allow for our generous donor partners to say, we want to lift that. we think that's good work to do. And so all those things combined formed Rock Ranch. So if you'd like me to, John, I can describe the 3 programs a little bit. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I would love to get an example of what are some of the experiences people have when they come to Rock Ranch.
Right. So for kids, the simplest thing is I call it driver's ed for kids and horses. We are going to teach kids how to tack, saddle, ride, stop, go, shift, everything you do in driver's ed 101 with a horse. You're going to be able to understand what the different size saddles mean, what different bits look like, all that sort of on the ground and in the saddle work. And then we'll teach you over a series of between 4 and 8 lessons how to work with that animal in partnership to learn how to ride. Second thing, we have a senior saddles program. So completely different than the kids. We bring assisted living center residents here to Hills, Minnesota on site. They come up in these great buses. They're the wildest people we work with, mind you. They need more supervision than they send with them. But they come and they want to talk about their ranch experiences growing up, or the time that they rode horses in the mountains, or wherever they came from. Then they want to meet the horses. A lot of them, if you haven't seen joy harvested in our world, I would show you the face of a 90-year-old who gets back in the saddle and starts to come forward on a horse, who used to do it for a living, and their face just lights up.
That's cool.
It's an amazing gift for us, and we think for them as well. Then they go back.
Real quick, I just want to point out for our listening audience that isn't watching our video right now, Les is feverishly taking notes on that package. I think that's the one he wants. So go ahead.
I'm thinking an EntrePastor meetup, for our
strategic planning
our
session.
tribe.
Right.
Yeah.
No, seriously, that actually, I was thinking that, like, when Les and Paige come up, I want to come and see what we got going on. Maybe we will do a meetup.
You are cordially invited anytime. You can make it work. We can make it happen.
Keep going. I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's all right. That program is popular and is also one of the ones we have a lot of volunteers that want to be a part of, because they love to see what I just described. And seniors having a great time. And then the third program, we have a mental health program for persons struggling with the things of life. So it could be any number of diagnoses, any number of referral sources. The stuff that we do that I think our donor base gets most excited about is we partner with a group here locally called Call to Freedom. Call to Freedom is the South Dakota-based nonprofit who helps rescue people who've been either sex trafficked or labor trafficked. And in those realms, those people who are coming out of that life need places that can help them reorient themselves. And so through our mental health program, we've got several licensed Christian counselors. We have equine specialists who walk alongside them, and through a series of different experiences, we can help them try to get back to better and identify the things that they're struggling with. We use horses in that program as more metaphorical. The people who come for care will tell stories about what they're seeing, and inevitably those stories start to yield back into a personification of what's happening in their life. My wife describes it so much better. I'm totally butchering this, and I'm sorry, John. Sorry.
That's okay. That's good.
Yeah. But at the end of go ahead.
Well, just a really random question with that. I have a little bit of experience with horses in my younger years, and I've also heard that horses are like extremely emotionally intelligent animals. And so when you started describing that, I was just wondering, like, do the horses play a role in any of that? Like, seriously, like, do they have any kind of role that they play with these people?
People who don't know horses, my wife would say I might be one of them. People who don't know horses well may take a step back when I say this, but what I can tell you is through hundreds of sessions, not just here at Rock Ranch, but with partners that we work with across the country, national leaders in equine assisted counseling. Horses are some of the most intuitive animals we've ever been able to partner with in this life, and they have an ability to kind of help a person who is in need of talking about their situation, who's in need of counseling, cut through the BS of what's holding them back, because those horses can read you and they know a thing or two more than people think they do. And it's really fascinating to watch it play out. We see it here every week. So it's
cool.
And I don't want to apply supernatural characteristics or anything like that. I won't do it, but I will tell you that it is fascinating to hear what the people who come for care describe as their experience with a horse supported counseling versus what their experience may have been like in another traditional setting, which just may not work for them, may work for others. But this method and this mode of delivery, both our therapists and the people say, help them get to the root of the issue quicker.
That's
And
fascinating.
that helps them get back to better quicker.
I love that. So here's another little random question, but it's this will be really relevant to many in our audience. You mentioned earlier, like using some of your background in the business world to help kind of decipher, for instance, do we set this up as a nonprofit or a for-profit? So I'd be curious to hear your story on that, if you don't mind sharing.
Right.
How did you make that determination? Why did you guys, for your context, choose a nonprofit model versus a for-profit? Because, by the way, just a little side note for someone that might be new listening to this, we see business as ministry. Like, we don't make a distinction between sacred work for the Lord and then this, just unnecessary secular work. Like, we see it all as ministry. But how did you package your ministry as nonprofit versus for-profit in this case?
Yeah, it's a great question. I put an Excel spreadsheet together, assigned several pivot tables, and no, if you knew me well enough, you know that. What we did was I asked Marie a simple question to start us down which path, and the question was, Marie, do we care if we make any money in this at all? Or is there a goal to do something with it beyond that? And the answer was no, Dan. If we don't make a penny, then that's fine, as long as we can help people. Okay, that's great. I said, then if we're going to take that route, we're going to explore the 501 side. And so as we did that, what we did, and I want to be clear here, we built an organization with the grace of God, and a beautiful new arena and all of that, never anticipating that we weren't going to create meaningful work with meaningful jobs that paid well for people who came to work for Rock Ranch, including Marie, who's the executive director. We grew into that slowly, conservatively, responsibly over time, but with the 501c3 designation versus an LLC or an S Corp or an LLP, you can partner with a generous community, or any community who you hope will become generous in that donation standpoint. So as you start to deliver services that others can recognize as essential for a community, but maybe they're not going to do it themselves, but they want to help you with that, well, there may be $25 for that. There may be 50, there may be 100. In some cases, there may be much more. And we have had all of those experiences at Rock Ranch. So partnering with a generous community allows us to keep the cost of the experiences at a manageable level for people who come for lessons, senior saddles, counseling. We can keep those services available at a non-barrier cost, and we'll still scholarship even if they can't afford the rates. But we can offer it at a lower cost because of that charitable support. So we invite that investment charitably into Rock Ranch, combined with the fees that people do pay. That lifts us to a place where we've ended up in the black each year, John, and we push a little bit forward each year. We now have a couple of funds that are permanent endowments that feed us annually, or feed some of our, not huge, but start that trail of dollars to us annually, so we can offer competitive wage positions for our barn manager, competitive wage position for our office manager. We're getting there with our CEO position, and we just hired 1 day a week a counseling services director who is going to do a lot more from a referral standpoint. So we're creating real jobs here in Southwest Minnesota with developing benefit plans around them, not apologizing for being a nonprofit in this community whatsoever. We are using that nonprofit status to allow us to work with hundreds of people who want to help what we're doing, see it as necessary, see it as essential in some cases, and maybe they're not the ones who are going to do it on their farm or do it in their life, but they want to help us do it. And we're so thankful. I mean, it's been a blessing to partner with so many volunteers and so many donors.
I love that.
And how many years you been doing that? What are you in?
Right, 2016. So we started in
Yeah, you
2016,
said.
and now we're about in our year 7.
So it sounds like you've made some significant progress. I mean, those are some major steps that you just mentioned. Where do you see it going? I mean, how far out have you all looked?
Yeah, so we continue to have conversations with our board around, is our physical location the best location for us? And there are so many reasons that it is and that it's not. So we look at where will be the next physical location, and when will we be ready for that? Because we have a waiting list for our riding program. We have a waiting list for some others. And so we know that we've built a supply, and now we have to meet that demand. So we've expanded some hours of availability. We're year round now. When we first started, we were only like 6 months a year. If we'd been in Alabama, well, no problem. We could have gone year round no matter what. But
Yeah.
but up here, we can't do counseling outside in the depths of February. So now we can, because we have the full arena. And that arena has been made all the difference in the world. So will there be a secondary arena? That's part of the meeting that demand. We know there is a large demand for mental health care. We are adding to our counseling program to try to meet it. I think, Les, the best way I can answer it is we're going to try to see how far these 3 core programs we're offering can go to where they're fully, where we're fully maximizing the use of the arena while not affecting the life of our herd. The herd are also a part of this. You can't just work the horse 50 hours a week. It's not fair to them. And so we work hard to make sure we're respecting that herd and using horses at certain points. And so when we get all of that maximized with the 3 programs we have, that's when we'll be ready for the next conversation around, where does Rock Ranch West happen? Who's going to run it? How do we make sure we can deliver the same kind of service model that people have enjoyed here? And how do we branch from there? I've had conversations, numerous ones about, do you brand this thing like, Burger King? And I'm like, well, I don't know that we want to take that route right now. I want to make sure that what we've got is replicable in multiple sites, multiple places before we do that. So we have to test that. We have to do consulting work around that. I get called into different meetings frequently to talk about it. And so we're in that. So we're studying it right now. That's where we're studying to see once we maximize what we're doing to its full, where every hour that is available is totally full. Then we'll decide what the next location looks like. But I could see that happening.
I love that.
Your short question, sorry. But
oh, that's good. Did you have a follow-up on that, Les?
No, I was just wondering. Yeah, I can tell that Dan's got vision, and I was just kind of wondering what, and getting his head a little bit to see where that was going.
Yeah.
I just love hearing you riff on this, because it's like, even for those in our audience that are just getting started on their journey, it shows that you're never really out of that, like you're always thinking, you're always planning, you're always looking ahead and overcoming obstacles, challenges, all of that. So I love hearing you kind of think out loud about some of that. So here's a question. Did you wrestle with so let me back up and give the context. We see this often. We see pastors who are going into the marketplace, and there's some level of like imposter syndrome, or I don't feel qualified for this type of work. Did you wrestle with that coming the other direction? I think what I'm asking is it easier to go from, corporate marketplace work into more of a nonprofit ministry work, or is it just as hard to go from nonprofit church work into the marketplace? Are you still dealing with the same issues, or does that make sense what I'm poking around at with that question?
Yeah, I believe that the whole of my experience and the whole of Marie's experience allowed this to be as smooth a transition as was possible. I don't think without either of our previous experiences, this would have been easy just coming out the gate. I think so many organizations that are like ours will struggle and fail because there's not somebody who they might have a great, brilliant idea over here and be able to do all the things that conceptualize a cool service or 2 or 3 services, but the business side suffers. and understanding how to do that in a way that invites participation, in our case as a nonprofit, is a struggle. And so if you don't marry those two things together, either in one person or in our case in two, then you will struggle. And so what happens is organizations start, they go, they have a great growth, they get to a spot where they see some really cool things happening, and then they look at the books and they go, holy cow, we did all these great things, but we're still short 50 grand. What do we do about that? Well, who does fundraisers? How do we do that? And I'm like, oh gosh, these are all things that have to develop mutually together in an organization like Rock Ranch, or you just don't have an organization that can stand the test of time. And so for me, my experiences both in nonprofit work and for-profit work helped us do this. I did need a supportive and understanding firm in Hub International who said, Dan, we know you're going to need some time to do this. We know that this is going to take a little time, but it's what's on your heart. It's what happens. And we want to see it go. And what's been really great is some of the same people that I work with at Hub have become some of the same people who support Rock Ranch.
Cool.
And so it all has graciously blended a lot together. And of course, Rock Ranch is a client of Hub. And so there's a natural tie there as well.
Yeah.
So some of the questions that we receive are about this very thing. Because of people, they have a heart to serve. They've been in not-for-profits, many of them. Now they're thinking, maybe marketplace, maybe an LLC, maybe an S Corp. So you're 7 years in. I would suspect there's bound to have been at least a moment or two that you thought, I just don't know. Should have set this up differently. So going back, now that you've got the experience of, 2020 hindsight or the luxury of that, would you do it all the same if you had to do it over again? Because we do have some people listening now that are building something and they're wrestling with this, like, which route do I go? I've had people try to speak in that into my own life of ventures that I'm either thought about doing or am in the process of it.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that the homework we did around this question was a week plus of pouring through the different organizational codes that were available to us via the US and Minnesota based system. Mm-hmm. I would say we made the right call in 2016, and I would not have changed it. And the reason that is so is because we started out right away saying, look, we're going to be able to do these things, and we're going to offer these services and these experiences at these costs. We're never going to be able to make it on just those costs. But if we raise those costs to what it takes, no one's going to come. And so with our board on board, mm-hmm. and with a initial group of generous community members around us, both in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Hills, Minnesota, Beaver Creek, Minnesota, Northwest Iowa, that family of folks, we went and shared with them what we wanted to do. So we had a couple of meetings that explained to our neighborhood in the rural area, here's what we're going to do and why, and here's why we think it matters. We created communication vehicles, social media communication vehicles, lots of info. We were a wide open book. This is how we're doing it and why we think it matters. Well, then what started to happen, Les, was stories start to come out of that. Stories of people who've had incredible experiences for their kids, who've had incredible experiences for their mom and dad at an assisted living center, and who've had remarkable turnarounds from counseling services. And when those things started to happen, additional interest came from corporate partners who want to do something good in the community, from other individuals maybe who have a different level of means than we'd run into before, who see this as an extension of what we ought to be doing, in our community for others. And so Marie and I happen to have a love and a heart for this, and we happen to believe that if we build it, they will come. The old Costner movie, right? And that has happened and is still happening. And so I would say that we made the right call. I have not regretted that. And we've been able to, again, because of people interested who are having great experiences, and we've got a great team leading that, and a generous community, we've been able to make that happen. So we made the right call.
Dan, as I hear you share that, this is fresh in my mind because at the time of this recording, literally today, Les and I took our mastermind through this book, Who Not How. And there's a principle that you just spoke to there, whether you realize it or not, that Dan Sullivan talks about this in the book, that if you get clear on what you want, if the more clear you are in your vision and you speak that vision, the more likely the right who's are going to find you and be attracted to you and come alongside you to say, I can help you get what you want here. I can help you accomplish that. So just wanted to share that. Like, that's a good principle for anybody that's building anything. Like, speak that vision, have clarity on that vision, and the right people eventually are going to assemble around you.
For your listenership, gentlemen, what I would encourage is the hard work and the time consuming work of recruiting the right board. If you're going to have a for-profit or a not-profit, doesn't matter, but recruiting the right people to be with you and really pushing one another. If you're all by yourself, the right mentors. If you've got a spouse like we have, my spouse and I, taking the time to do the hard stuff that requires thought. What I love about Austin Brooks's program is they teach young entrepreneurs to think, and they teach them to reason, and they teach them to process well and ask good questions. And if we can set aside the things that we both, like, I don't know how to build a beautiful thing that kids want to come to, but I know how to make sure it stays. And so Marie and I partnered together in that, and doing the hard lift before you launch, right? It's like NASA doesn't send a rocket up until it has 1,000 checkpoints, some kind of check to make sure that this is going to most likely get off the ground into space. And so we look at this like, and that's a silly analogy for this, but we look at it like you have to do the hard work, asking the difficult questions, the what if questions. How would we handle it if this happened? What would our response be to this type of question? All of that pre-work has to happen before you even invite somebody over to your front yard to do a lesson. How do you do it right? And thinking of the insurance stuff, the liability, all that. Get that figured out before you do your first, and everything will go so much smoother. Yeah,
I love that. And by the way, you're setting us up good for a transition. I wanted to switch over and talk a little bit about the CEO program that you helped. I don't know if you helped bring it to the area or if you just now oversee it, but remind our audience, for those that might have missed the episode with Austin Brooks, what is the CEO program? And then talk a little bit about what it looks like regionally where you are responsible for it. And then I've got one more follow-up on the CEO thing, but tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I'm really fortunate to be the chair of the board for Southwest Minnesota's Creating Entrepreneurial Opportunities high school experience. And so I was part of the group that said, let's do this here in Southwest Minnesota, and let's see if we can take otherwise very competitive school districts with one another who are going to fight it out on a Friday night on the gridiron or on the basketball court. And let's see if we can get these kids to play nice in the sandbox together while we're teaching them how to become entrepreneurs and eventually how to create some of their own businesses. And so that started at, I'm going to say that was right around the same time Rock Ranch started. I'm going to say 2017, it might have been the year that we started that. And so we have had a great response from school districts in our Southwest Minnesota counties of Pipestone, Nobles, and Rock, who are making students available to this program and making students aware of this program. When students apply for our program, we average between 15 and 20 students in the program each year, 2 to 3 from each of those 7 school districts. And they come together every morning at like 7 a.m. These kids are getting out of bed early. And on terrible winter days, thank goodness for Zoom, they're able to stay, and connected that way. But sometimes they'll travel and they'll meet up at a different place, never at a school. They always meet at a business somewhere in our region to have class days and then to have individual work days. They might tour 30, 40 different businesses over the course of a year in our region, learning about what makes our specific part of the state tick. And all the things they drive by and they see on a weekly basis and have no idea what goes on at Reed's Outfitters or at Bob's Implement Dealership they have no idea, but they can now come inside, be invited as a group of hungry and thirsty young people who want to know how this works. How does the bread get buttered? And our business owners and our entrepreneurial leaders across Southwest Minnesota have been wonderful to them. We even scratch over the border to South Dakota, who's got a great business environment and a great business environment in Iowa. So our whole region can benefit if these kids can stay home in the region and bring some of what they're developing entrepreneurial skills are back into this world. So whether they ultimately work for somebody that they met while they were in the class or build something of their own, that's the impetus behind the program. And again, I'm blessed to be a part of leading a really talented board in making sure that it's sustainable for the long haul.
Yeah, I love that. We're fans of what Austin and the team are doing with the CEO program. Here's my follow-up question, and this is not for everybody listening, but it may be for someone. We like to expose our audience to a lot of different options of what is out there. What could it look like for you to be in the marketplace or have another stream of revenue? And for some, I really believe for some pastors, it may be a great fit for them to be the one to bring or to work with the business community in their area to bring CEO to their high school. And I was going to ask you to speak to that. If there's a pastor listening to this, that might be for them. Like, what goes into that? Because it is a paid position, I believe, correct? Like, if you're the one that facilitates it, what does that look like, and how would you get set up with that?
John, that's a great thought. Really good. We've got a great facilitator who happens to be who lives in Laverne, Minnesota. And we had a facilitator before her who was great. He lived in Laverne, Minnesota, but it is a position. And I would say that a pastor probably has a really great insight into the people who are operating at least some of the businesses that are in the region that they are in, and could comfortably have a conversation at the school level to say, their role looks like this. Making sure they can visit with the kids, operating a curriculum that's provided by Midland, which is Austin's Midland Institute. That curriculum's provided to us, just like it would be to a teacher in a school district. So you walk through the curriculum, which is, giving them the basics of finance, marketing, management, accounting, all the things that go into a business. And if a pastor could educate them around those things, lead their conversations, help the students decide what kind of class business they were going to operate, support it, help them work it. That's what the work is. There's, of course, like any teacher, there's going to be involvement of students that have individual questions, students that have questions that are going to require a response of, I don't think that's a great idea, Tommy, and others that say, I think you should run at that. That might be something really great to do. So coaching, teaching, lifting, supporting, that's the role of our facilitator. And I would think a pastor would be ideal for it.
Yeah.
It would be they're used to patient conversation. If they can handle working with 16 and 17-year-olds full of energy and life and vigor and sometimes crazy ideas, might be a great place to spend extra time.
Yeah. Well, I'm believing for it. I will consider EntrePastors a success when someday we can point to a school that has a CEO program that we help connect the facilitator there through this audience. So it'll happen.
That'd be great.
If that happens, John, Les, if somebody reaches out and says, I'd like to talk about doing that with a program, I mean, Austin's a great connection point, but I'm right here. I mean, if they need to talk about it, you could feel free to share my contact information. I can come through and get them connected to the right people.
And we will share your contact information both on the show notes and before we wrap up here today. But one last area we want to get into, and I'll let Les lead the charge in this. We want to talk a little bit about your book. So Les, go ahead.
Yeah, just before we wrap up, I'd like to hear about that. Looking at the title there, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm not sure. I mean, we really believe in a model Dan, where a lot of entrepreneurs, small business owners, and people in the not-for-profit space will have a kind of a companion book that supports and expands the platform, and they leverage it in that way. I'm looking at the title of your book, and it doesn't seem to be the case with you, but it may be. So I'm wondering, is it more of kind of a passion project, something that was on your heart that you did as a standalone thing, or did you strategically, or do you kind of use that to expand that your voice and your platform?
Yeah, that's great thought, Les. And I would say yes and both.
Okay, good.
So here's what we did. I got a copy of it right here. And so where this book came from
Real quick, what's
is
the title of the book for those that can't see it?
Grandpa's Gift. Grandpa's Gift. Yep. And the subtitle is How Old Wisdom Can Inspire New Life. So I would say, to answer that question specifically, and then I can talk a little bit about the genesis of that if you'd like me to answer it specifically, this was a movement in me that my grandfather on my mother's side, my maternal grandfather, helped me crystallize through a series of messages that he delivered as a Methodist minister in the mid 1960s that I kind of rediscovered in my mid 30s.
Nice. I
And
love it.
right. And so that for me was what needed to get out. But you're right, Les, in that because we've had our family did not need to have any business tie to this book. Dan LaRock did not need this to be a successful monetary enterprise at all. But Rock Ranch could be lifted if this book did have a successful run and rollout. And so what's been the honor of my year so far in 2023 are the 2 proceed checks that I've been able to write to Rock Ranch out of the Grandpa's Gift sales, and continue to invest in the ministry, in the mission, while getting these stories that lifted my life at a time where I had questions. And then to go back to the words of my grandpa Max, I was just blown away. And so if I have a couple of minutes, John, I can explain a little bit about the genesis of the book.
Go right ahead.
So my grandfather was born in Beersford, South Dakota, became a Methodist minister in 1928, ministered in South Dakota, North Dakota, Minnesota for 30 years. He then was called by the Methodist Conference to the Bay Area of California. What a shift, right? So he moved to the Bay Area, and they needed at this time people to come in who had 25, 30 years of experience to help shepherd some churches in Santa Clara, in all over San Francisco, Oakland, you name it, all over the Bay Area, Palo Alto. So in that realm, Grandpa was also asked to deliver a series of radio addresses all across the West Coast from 1961 till 1965. And he delivered 30 of these messages. My grandmother recorded those messages, or had written them all down, and they put them together in kind of a family memoir book that was available to family and friends. There was a few copies out there, and I had a copy of it. And 15 of those messages spoke so loudly into my life as I was becoming more intentional in my faith walk in my early mid 30s, and then again re-engaging it when I hit like my mid 40s, near COVID time. The messages are about things like racial reconciliation. And as you can imagine, in San Francisco Bay Area in the mid 1960s, what that conversation was like. 2 or 3 stories of my grandpa referenced Martin Luther King. One of those stories went live on the radio the day before Selma. Right. So these are real-time messages coming at the same time real history was happening around my grandpa. So racial reconciliation, youth disillusionment, underwhelming government. Mental health was a huge component of these messages in a time where you weren't talking about that. That would not have been a real popular sermon
No.
in the middle of 1960s in America. So all these messages sounded so strikingly familiar to me as 2020 was upon us. And I thought, oh my gosh, Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. Holy cow, all that's old is new again. And as I started to shine a light on these with friends of mine and pastors that I work with regularly and people in our circles, they said, you need to reshare that. You need to get those messages out, and you need to say a little bit about your walk. I didn't want to do the latter. I'm like, who am I? Like, I'm nobody in this space, right? And they said, well, that's right. You are nobody. You are every man. And that is exactly who your grandfather is writing to. That is exactly who the gospel needs to reach. You don't have to have any kind of a platform to do that. You need to go out and be the hands and feet of Jesus every day, in however that looks for you. And certainly being aware of what that means with respect to the gospel. And so, long story short, that's how it came to be. And we've just been so thankful for Quality Publisher and Throne Publishing Group in South Dakota, and then a great lift from people that are close to us. And now I'm having conversations every week with people I don't know about the book.
Awesome.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
Well, when the next one that's in you is ready to come out, we know a guy. All right. So just keep us in mind. We do have EntrePastor Press. And so we're always looking for authors with a message to share. So we can talk if you want.
Oh man, thank you, Les. I get asked that question, usually question 3 or 4 is, when's the next one coming? And I'm like, oh, this one just launched 3 months
I was
ago.
gonna say, Les, he's just trying to sell the first one. You're already trying to get him on the second one. I like how you're.
Yeah, but he used the secondary publishing house. I'm just trying to help him out a little
I
bit,
know.
you know?
Yeah,
He could have done better there, but that's fine. We won't hold that.
Of course.
That's all right.
Take us home, John.
Yep.
Well, Dan, our time is running out here, but this has been awesome. And I know you and I need to connect. I think we have plans to connect here locally, and I want to get to know you more. But for those listening, if anyone wants to reach out and, see more about what you're doing or connect with you, what's the best way for people to connect and reach you?
All of my contact information does live inside of my LinkedIn profile. You are free to reach out to Dan LaRock on LinkedIn. It's the Dan LaRock. After my name will be author, Grandpa's Gift, Hub International, Rock Ranch. All those things are referenced on me. So LinkedIn's a great way. And my cell phone number's in there, everything. I'm also active on Facebook, Instagram. Social media is probably the best way to grab me, and my email address is there too. For the book specifically, grandpasgiftbook.com. So grandpasgiftbook.com has got a great way to connect in through that as well.
Fantastic. Well, we'll put all of those links in the show notes for the show. And Dan, any last word of encouragement? Let me just describe the profile of our listener. The average person listening to this is someone who has a heart to serve the Lord. They've been, serving in some kind of formal ministry or close to that for a while now, but they're tired of struggling financially. They want to do better and provide a little better for their family, and they see maybe business and entrepreneurialism as a way forward in that. What would you say to encourage a pastor that's either thinking about making that leap and doing both, having a foot in both, marketplace and traditional ministry, or someone that's going from one over to the other? Like, if you had just a quick minute to encourage them, what would you say to them?
I would say, for God's sake, do it. I am a member of a church in Sioux Falls, South Dakota called Embrace. And the lead pastor of that church, along with some of the associate pastors, are all very active in lots of different endeavors in addition to shepherding their flocks. My lead pastor is Pastor Adam Weber. He wrote the foreword for my book, has several books out himself, has a great podcast. He's doing good things for people in a number of different ways, and those ways absolutely provide him additional support in addition to his salary from the church.
Yeah.
I want to share with both of you that your recent episode that talked about the Lord working in the marketplace. I believe you started out talking about Asbury, but it became, is the Lord working in our marketplace? I would just remind pastors listening to this that their flocks spend 167 hours each week outside of their church. And in those moments, if there's something that they can do to help add a value to their parishioners, their neighborhoods, their communities' lives, that is a monetary creating service or whatever it might be that gets them into a different realm, well, their people are going to need pastoral care and that service. So you can have time with people, not just the hour or two on a Sunday. There's 167 other hours. So in that realm, the Lord's people need care. You guys both know, 24/7 in some cases, right? So at the end of the day, as someone who attends a church where the pastor does have that kind of and in previous churches I've been at, if a pastor would have said, I want some release time to do some consulting, or I want some release time to do this, I'd been, amen. The more you know about the world I live in, the better
it's good.
You're going to be when I need you. So when the things of the world stack up to a place that stresses someone like me, or to where I need a pastoral counselor, it'd be good if the pastor understands the world that I'm living in, not just on paper.
That's so good.
Yep.
That's so good, man. I teed it up and you just knocked it right out of the park.
Yeah. You need to mark that, man, so we can go back and get the clip out and use it, John. That was perfect.
You know what? That's a TikTok video right there. You just made us a TikTok video, Dan. Thank you for that.
You better hurry. They're fixing to cancel it.
I know. We better get it on there quick. So,
well, guys, I've loved visiting with you. Thank you for thinking that I might be someone interesting to talk with. It's been wonderful. Yeah, John, I can't wait to get up to Flandreau and we'll spend some time together. And I want to, we talked a little bit about that too. That would be great. And let's, I might show up on your doorstep 4 hours on the beach sometime.
Let's go.
Come on. We'll take
all right. All the best to you, Dan. Thank you so much for your time. We're grateful for you, my man.
God bless you both. Thank you.
All right.
Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the EntrePastors podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the EntrePastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our EntrePastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own EntrePastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at EntrePastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.